Let me ask you this. If you're a dentist and you're listening right now, what is it that's stressing you out? What is it that's keeping you up at night? Is it burnout, the pressure of staying profitable in your business, leading a team, finding freedom and balance in your life, or maybe just finding purpose in the type of dentistry that you're doing? Well, if any of that sounds familiar to you, then today's episode will speak directly to what you want to hear. Welcome to Bite-Sized Dental Marketing. My name is Ian, and today we talk to the great and powerful Dr. Mark Costas. Dr. Mark Costas is a dentist, entrepreneur, author, speaker, and the founder of the Dental Success Institute and the Dentalpreneur podcast. He's one of the most respected voices in this profession, not just for his business acumen, but also for having helped so many dentists build systems, improve how they lead their teams, and find freedom in the work that they are doing. His story is one of resilience and reinvention. It spoke to me, and I'm sure that it will speak to you too. Enjoy. I want to start out by, I actually want to ask you, if you weren't doing dentistry, what would you be doing? Because I know you've made a success of this. Is there anything, was there ever a different path for you?
Yeah, interesting. Dentistry came on my radar because I ran into a fence playing baseball and knocked out all of my top front teeth and broke my jaw. Prior to that, when I was 16 years old, dentistry was not on my radar. I had dreams of being an orthopedic surgeon. I wanted to be a physician. But also, entrepreneurship was really big in my family. So I was kind of torn. Like, I wanted to go into healthcare, but I also wanted to be an entrepreneur. And after I got interested in dentistry after my accident, I realized how entrepreneurial you could be within the profession of dentistry and how limiting it was for medicine. Medicine has already experienced a large consolidation here in the United States. So the vast majority of physicians now work for a large hospital group or for private equity or in a big group practice. So entrepreneurship is limited in medicine in comparison to dentistry as far as healthcare fields go. So, while I was trying to get into dental school took me 3 years and 21 tries. It's very competitive in the United States to get in, and I had no more than an average kind of application to dental school. So it took me 3 years and 21 tries to get into dental school, and I got one acceptance out of 21 tries. So 20 rejections and one acceptance. But during that time, I was lucky enough to start my own business, which was a catering truck. We'd drive around to construction sites and to large office buildings that didn't have a cafeteria, and I would feed those people in there. So that was my first business, and at the same time, I was getting my MBA. So I was learning about business in the classroom and in the trenches with this tiny little small business that I had. So I did for a period of time while I was getting my MBA and I was not getting into dental school. I thought about a lot of different careers. I think that a lot of my classmates in the MBA program were preparing to be a cog in a wheel and to climb that corporate ladder, and they were using the MBA to kind of propel them higher up on that corporate ladder. But I always saw myself as a business owner, and I wanted to make sure that I was captain of my own destiny. It would have been any number of different business ventures if it wasn't dentistry.
Yeah, I can tell. You had your hands full from a very early stage. And was it just, did something snap for you that you said, okay, dentistry is the path that I want to go in then? Because it sounds like you were juggling a lot of balls, but then in some way you figured out, okay, I'm going to apply everything in business and then go in this direction.
The dentistry for me was a passion because of what this group of dentists and dental specialists and physicians was able to do to rebuild my face. It was a very, very traumatic injury. So if you can imagine, I have implants across the front of my upper jaw here, and I had a broken jaw as well. So it was 16, 18 months before I was all put back together. So those people really inspired me because I saw that they had this really high level of specialty and the ability to really just control smiles, and they were healers as well. So I became passionate about that, but I never lost my drive for entrepreneurship. So I really feel as though dentistry has been that sweet spot, that healthcare profession that I was seeking, but also allowed me to flex my entrepreneurial muscle in a lot of ways.
Do you feel too many dentists these days go into this profession with that cog into the machine type of mentality, whereas yours was this passion type of, I am amazed by what I was able to see, and I am this entrepreneur, so I want to go and do it? Or what is your experience of this next wave of dentists, if I can talk it that way?
Yeah, I'm blessed here. I've spoken at more than probably half of the dental schools. There's 65 dental schools right now in the United States. I've spoken at maybe half of them. Um, so I really, really am passionate about speaking to the next generation of dentists. Usually I get invited to speak at dental schools by the practice management professor or a business club. And to me, it's always disheartening to see how few dentists are interested in the business side of things. And it makes sense, right? Very few people go into dentistry thinking, I want to be a businessman. More people go into dentistry saying, I want to be a clinician, I want to be a healer, I want to be a surgeon. But yes, it's a small percentage of dentists that actually think about building an enterprise. More of them are thinking about being a very high level clinician, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But there's a small percentage of dentists out there and dental students out there that are interested in business, interested in scale, interested in seeing if they could build a real business. And then the vast majority of dentists I see are looking for an opportunity to be a great clinician, and entrepreneurship takes a sideline to that for sure.
And is there anything, if you do think back and you could give yourself one piece of advice when you had started this empire of yours, that you would like to say to a young Dr. Mark Costas?
I do believe that we go through different phases in our entrepreneurial and clinician's journey. And I think that one of the things that I did that ended up really being probably the most valuable learning experience for me was I tried to do too much in the beginning, and I let my I hate the term, but I let my work-life balance get way out of whack. I was working 80-hour weeks. I had 3 young boys back at home, and my wife was kind of raising our kids as a single mom because I was on the road so much. I had 6 dental practices really, really quickly. So those became the main focus of my life. And if I was to give myself any advice, if I could go back in time and I was to give myself any advice, I don't spend a whole lot of time dwelling on mistakes that I've made because I believe that they're all extremely valuable lessons. But if I was to go back and be able to change anything, I would take things a little bit more slowly and make sure that I was building very quality dental practices and not looking for volume and not looking to hit some arbitrary number as far as income and number of practices from the very beginning. What I've seen happen is that many of my members inside DSI have focused more on 1 or 2 very large and profitable practices instead of several small ones. And I at the time I had like a number. I wanted to hit 10, and then when I hit 10, I wanted to get to 15. But I could have done the same amount of dentistry and maybe a higher quality of practice if I would have focused on, maybe 5 mega practices instead of 16 smaller practices. So that would probably be the main advice that I would give to myself. Build quality practices, take time to build them up, and not spread myself so thin.
Is that part of why you think so many dentists struggle with burnout? Like, why is this such a theme in this profession? We know it's... My dad's a dentist, for the record, Dr. Costa. So right. I saw firsthand, he owned his own practice for 30 years. I saw firsthand what it did to our family when things were slow at the practice, what it did to him. That got me doing some research, and back then already I found that dentistry has one of the highest suicide rates of any profession out there. Why are so many dentists struggling with burnout?
Yeah, burnout is an interesting phenomenon that we face, particularly in dentistry. I think the roots of it, and this might be biased, but I think the roots of burnout when it comes to business ownership and dentistry, they're 2 completely different skill sets. And I think a lot of people go into dentistry thinking that if I become the best clinician possible and focus all my efforts just on clinical development and clinical evolution, that the business stuff will take care of itself. And what happens is the clinical side of things gets handled very, very well. But if you don't run a very efficient enterprise, then you end up splitting your attention to human resources and marketing and operational issues, trying to do things without systems, trying to haphazardly train and onboard team members. Those are the things that actually end up engulfing our attention and creating the vast majority of burnout, I believe, from what I've seen with working with thousands of dental practice owners over the last 20 years. So I think that if in the beginning you take the business development and business acumen as seriously as you take the clinical development, then you can really, really position yourself to avoid that hamster wheel and that burnout trap. Specifically, if you are able to build an operation where you are not the primary or sole provider, and you can build a strong enough business where you're onboarding good associates and you're multiplying your ability to generate income within the four walls of your dental practice, that of course is going to decrease burnout, right? I always say that there's two different things that you need to keep in mind. You can't produce your way out of a broken infrastructure. And the only way to avoid burnout in general is if you figure out a way to make dentistry optional, clinical dentistry optional. And that's what I was able to do towards the end of my career, right? So I was able to put good associates in my practices. I was able to assemble an effective executive level team that could run the systems that I helped to create. And then I could stand back and take a broader view of the business, and I could select the patients that I wanted to see and the types of clinical procedures that I wanted to do. And dentistry became optional. And that is a beautiful, clinical dentistry for me became optional. And that is a beautiful place to be. And that's the best way to structure your life and your business. That's a good goal in order to avoid that whole burnout thing. But, you know, when you're doing procedures, sometimes 2 or 3 patients simultaneously and doing a couple hygiene checks and worrying about HR, marketing, operations, and all of that stuff, it's impossible to avoid burnout. So you have to keep in mind that you have to structure your business in a way that the business is actually running itself, and your executive team or the leaders in your team are running the business, and you're able to focus on the clinical aspects of things. That's the best way to avoid it.
So delegation, is that the word that comes up for you, becoming an expert delegator in how you run your business and putting the right people in place to be able to take on the things that that your 2 hands just can't do at scale?
Yeah, I think delegation is a part of a bigger picture, right? We like to use the term operator. This is the good operator. This person has figured out how to delegate effectively, how to create systems, how to hold team members accountable, how to be an effective leader. It's a big kind of all-encompassing skill set. Delegation is a big part of that, but it's not the only part of it. The business has to be sound. The infrastructure has to be sound. And once that infrastructure is built and pressure tested, then delegation becomes, the key.
Something you said in your seminar that stood out to me was, if you're expecting others to meet your standards, then that's a fast track to resentment. You need to do what you can control, and then let others do what they need to do. In my mind, where I go to this, I've run my own projects, I've done my own things. We all tend to want to micromanage, or we tend to want to say, okay, well, I could have maybe done it better. And it's bit me in the butt every single time when you try and do that. How did you get beyond that in being able to say, you need to sit back and let things happen the way it does?
Yeah, I put that on social media a lot, transferring your own expectations onto other people is really a fast track to resentment, and it's a spiral. It's a definitely a negative mindset spiral if you are imposing your expectations on other people's behavior, right? Like the big part about Stoicism, Ryan Holiday was the keynote speaker at our summit this year, and he is multiple New York Times bestselling author, and he's brought the ancient philosophy of Stoicism to the modern world. And what I've learned from following his books and interviewing him a couple times is that, Stoicism is a great way to look at things, right? One of the main tenets of Stoicism is control what you can control, and everything else will kind of fall into place. Let go, your expectations on certain people, set them up for success, give them all the resources to be successful, be very clear about your expectations. But after you've done those things, if they let you down, that's not on you anymore, right? However, if you don't set somebody up for success, you don't give them the resources, you don't give them the expectations, you don't give them the accountability and the systems, then that's on you as a leader, right? So I really do believe that, like, if you are constantly trying to control things that are out of your control, it's a recipe for disenchantment for sure. And that's not just in dentistry, that's just in life in general, right? So if your personal relationships are on the rocks and somebody is not showing up as a friend that you expect them to be a friend, or if somebody's not showing up as the leader you expect them to be in your practice, but you've given them all the resources, you've given them all the support, that's not on you. You have to be able to recognize that and detach yourself from that, control what you can control. For instance, if you have a team member or a number of team members that are creating a toxic environment and you let that fester within your organization, that's on you. That's not on those people that are creating the toxicity, right? So you have to be able to take a big step back and really analyze what's happening in the inner workings of your infrastructure, and then make adjustments accordingly. And if you are doing 50 hours of dentistry per week, you have no ability to take that self-reflective moment and step back and say, what's really happening within my business? So being able to control the amount of clinical dentistry that you're doing, so you can also be a CEO and the main operator within your practice, that is actually the key, is being able to be able to step back, take the time to do deep work and build the organization and adjust accordingly when things aren't going exactly the way you want them to go.
If we go to the dentist, which I'm sure you've heard many of this of, Doc, I heard what you're saying about the clinic, minimizing the clinical side of dentistry to a point where I can also be an entrepreneur, a business owner. But I'm just struggling. Like, I can't seem to get past that bug. Like, I am trying, I've listened to the seminars I'm doing, but it's just not working. Is that still then, do you have the wrong team around you? What comes to mind for you when you meet that dentist?
I really believe that I spend more time talking people out of doing coaching with me than I do, trying to talk people into doing coaching with me. Because if they're not coachable and they're not the appropriate, if they don't share our philosophies of growth and 100% accountability, then they're not going to be a good coaching client. They're not going to get a good result. There's also ways that they can consume our content and our teachings, just not in a very intimate environment of a mastermind group or one-on-one coaching, right? So, I do believe that I do believe that if you structure things the right way, then a lot of things really take care of themselves. If you do create a situation where dentistry is optional, you have just a very, very clear view of what needs to be done. So one of the problems that we have within our coaching group that's been, we're going on 14 years now, is that we have such an accumulation of content, such an accumulation of systems, such an accumulation of frameworks and documents and stuff. People look at this bank of information, 10,000 documents, 150 hours of live video, so much. Where do I start? The best place that I see people being able to get some traction is to just sit down and say, all right, I have a clipboard. I'm going to go through this week. And every time I see an inefficiency or something frustrates me and I'm solving the same problems over and over and over again, that is a red flag. And that is telling us we need to build a system around that. So people are always like, I don't even know where to start with systemization. Well, start with what are the things that are frustrating you most? What are the things that are holding the practice back the most? And in most cases, it has to do with lack of performance on the team that we have, or a bad attitude with the team that we have, and them not being coachable, them being open to change. Then maybe that's their first priority that you need to work on. Maybe it's your leadership. Maybe it's removing toxic people from the workplace. I don't know what that is, but typically it starts with underperformance of the team. So you just need to recalibrate what your expectations are, then put systems in place so that they are performing at the level you want them to, and some sort of accountability measures as well.
How often have you seen, Doc, that dentists can literally solve these two problems and it will literally change the way in which they love to do dentistry or that they enjoy at work?
Every day, right? Sometimes we're one associate away from liberation and a totally different life. Sometimes we're one office manager away from total liberation and significant decrease in stress and burnout. Sometimes we're 2 or 3 systems away from absolutely changing the way that we see the practice. People often, and this isn't just in dentistry, this is in entrepreneurship in general, people often create their own prisons, right? They create a business that they hate because the business takes on a life of its own and they lose control of it. And they lose the ability to step back because they don't have time and analyze what's going right, what's going wrong, and what small tweaks we can make in order to make this thing really start humming. So yes, I do believe that many times we are just one person or one system or one light bulb moment away from everything changing in our practice. What people don't understand is that us as dentists have a very finite number of issues that occur over and over and over again, right? So we break it down into just 6 main pillars of, if you learn how to handle these 6 main pillars, then you're going to be just fine. So when you see something like 6, I want to master these 6 things, it's a lot more handleable than everything's broken, I don't even know where to start. So we have a number of assessments. We have a leadership assessment, we have a systemization assessment, we have a cultural assessment, and then we assess based on the effectiveness of the P&L and the cash flow. So those are just a few of the ways that we use to kind of determine where we are as far as the strength of the practice that we're actually running. That's why we have a belt system. We have a belt system just like martial arts. So if you're a white belt, we're not looking at increasing revenue necessarily. We're focusing mainly on leadership, culture, and systemization, the infrastructure of the practice. Once you have the infrastructure of the practice all set up, then we're like, okay, now we can take a breath. We know that if we have a big marketing campaign, then the operations are going to support a bunch of new people coming into the practice, a bunch of new phone calls coming in. We know how to handle those correctly. We have a good patient experience once that person walks in the door for the first time. Those are all things that are infrastructure related. And if you don't have the infrastructure and the operations completely squared away, you shouldn't be thinking about a new marketing campaign. You shouldn't be thinking about getting advanced surgical training, because all of that stuff is secondary to the infrastructure first.
You've said you've worked with, of course, with many, probably thousands of dentists at this point. What separates the ones that actually successfully do what you're advocating for and the ones that at some point hit a ceiling? Like, is there certain traits that you've spotted that stands out to you?
One of my favorite books is called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He was a ex-Navy SEAL, special operations guy. He was a lead SEAL in the Battle of Ramadi. He's a legend in military circles, but he's also an incredible coach. He has a company called Echelon Front, which works with Fortune 500 companies on leadership and efficiencies. But the whole tenet behind the book Extreme Ownership is you are 100% responsible for everything that happens in your personal life and in your business. So the best members within our organization understand that it's nobody else's fault except for mine. So a lot of people spend way too much time looking out the window instead of looking in the mirror. So they're looking for ways that they can offset the inefficiency of a practice on somebody else. It's my office manager's fault. It's the back office clinical assistant's fault. It's my hygienist's fault. It's my associate's fault. The best people understand the general theme that I take extreme ownership. Everything that happens within the four walls of this practice is on me because I'm the CEO. I'm the leader of this practice. The best people that we come across and the most successful people take on that responsibility. And the people that continually struggle are the ones that throw their hands up in the air and say, the market is too tough. I can't deal with these DSOs. It's Delta Dental's fault. It's my office manager's fault. It's it's the current administration's fault. They're looking for any way to offset their own personal responsibility by pointing fingers. The people that do the best accept the responsibility that everything is on them. And if things are going to get better, that they're personally responsible for figuring out how to do that.
I know we just spoke about you don't blame the things around you, but we know that hiring good hygienists and just a pool of good candidates to work in a practice definitely changed from 2020 onwards. Something changed. At least that's what I've heard with many of the clients we've worked with.
Yep.
How do you go about that, building that team and that team development in the current climate where dentists feel like it's slim pickings?
You're absolutely true. After COVID here in the United States, there's between a 22 and 25% exodus of auxiliaries from dentistry. And then if you look at hygiene, I talked about this at the summit this year. If you look at hygiene, there's a 9,000 human being deficiency in the number of graduates that are graduating and available clinical practitioners in hygiene to the number of open positions that there are. So even if you took all of the people that are currently practicing hygiene and all of the new graduates every single year, you still have a 9,000 human being deficiency. So we don't have enough hygienists that are being released out into the world. And within the next 4 to 5 years, we expect to have a 40 to 50% exodus of existing hygienists due to retirement. So it's only going to get worse in the next 3 to 4 years. So we are definitely at a deficit. And it's more and more difficult to attract people into healthcare when there's shiny objects out there like, I want to be an influencer or I want to work from home, or the whole liability issue and the cost that I will get compensated or the fees that I'll get compensated for in the medical field are less than they would be in other fields. So we have a lot of headwinds that we have to contend with. I always come back to it's our responsibility to understand the trends that are happening out there and adjust accordingly. You're never going to get a level 10 operator, and that means auxiliaries in this case, or hygienist or associate dentist. You're not going to get a level 10 operator or auxiliary into a level 2 practice, right? So if you don't have current technology, if you don't have a strong culture, if you don't have a really appealing workplace as far as the aesthetics of it, if you don't have a good patient base and you're not, you're accepting, really low level insurances, you're not going to have a good experience for the people that come into your office. A lot of people will walk into an office and they'll see, 1970s decor and no technology and paper charts on the wall, and they'll walk right out. You have to develop a level 10 operation in order to attract level 10 people. And it's getting to the point where, you can't even get a warm body to walk into your office unless you have a really vibrant and positive work environment. So again, comes back to stoicism. What can we control? We can control the technology. We can control the flow of the practice. We can control our own personal leadership and charisma. We can control the aesthetic of the office. Those are things that we can control. So we are marketing to potential humans in our practice with the same vigor and intentionality that we are trying to attract new patients into our practice. So that's a mindset shift for a lot of people. It's like they put up an Indeed ad and they're like, I'm going to pay you $25 an hour to be a chairside assistant. Well, that falls into about, 50 other practices within, a 5-mile radius of your practice that have the same exact ad. What's going to separate you from that? Right? So we encourage people when they have these interviews, they are very intentional about treating those people as though they are a target to our marketing. And we're trying to build this incredible team, but first we have to build an incredible practice in order to get an incredible team. You don't just you can't just herd a bunch of unicorns that are level 10 people in a level 2 or 3 practice. It's impossible. So work on your practice first, make it an attractive place to work, because you have to understand that there's fewer qualified people out there, or even people that are willing to work, 8 hours a day, 4 days a week.
You mentioned trends a little bit ago. You're talking to a lot of dentists and people in the industry on a daily basis. What trends are you seeing in the coming years that's standing out in the conversations that you're hearing on a day-to-day basis?
There's some very definitive trends. Obviously, consolidation is happening at a rapid rate. We're currently, dentistry in the United States, we're currently about 35% consolidated. There's a lot of interest in dentistry from Wall Street, right? So if you look at private equity companies basically are an accumulation of different businesses that they purchase, right? So if a private equity company is going to come out and buy a technology company that has a high rate of failure, but if that actually becomes successful, that could be a huge windfall for a private equity company. So high risk, high reward for technology. And then you have things like manufacturing, and you have alcohol, and you have real estate, and you have all these different tranches of businesses. The reason that dentistry is attractive to private equity right now is because it is a hedge against other riskier investments. So within this tranche of businesses that a private equity company will be attracted to and to purchase, dentistry, healthcare, those are tried and true. We've proven through the global pandemic that we can survive anything and even thrive in the most challenging environments as an industry, right? So I do believe that is a big trend that we're going to see, is continuing consolidation. So if you're looking at a consolidation situation, you have to go into building your practice with the idea that if in 10 years we're going to be 50 or 60 or 70% consolidated versus 35% consolidated, that means that if we ever want to sell our dental practice, this asset that we're building over the course of our career, we're going to have to be attractive to all different types of buyers, not just doctor-to-doctor transitions, which are going to be less and less occurring, because with the more consolidation that occurs, the majority of the buying pool is going to be private equity-backed DSOs. So if you don't want to go join a DSO right now and you want to build a valuable asset, you have to make that from the beginning. You have to keep in mind that my vision is to make this attractive to all potential buyers. And if you want to be attractive to a private equity DSO in the future at some point, because that's going to be the vast majority of the buying pool, then you have to have a certain number of operatories, a minimum of 7 operatories. You have to be able to put 2 full-time practitioners in there to decrease key man risk to them. You have to have a very vibrant hygiene department. You have to have a very high level of profitability, low level of overhead. The EBITDA has to be within certain parameters in order to be an attractive target for the private equity buyer sometime in the future. That's one trend. Another trend is what we've already talked about. There's a decreasing availability of hygienists, so we're going to have to account for that. There's a decreasing number of qualified clinical assistants and admin assistants out there, so we're going to have to plan for that. Another trend that we're seeing is our young dentists graduating from dental school saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. That means that the stakes are much higher for those dentists that graduate with $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in debt, because they're going to have to get out of the gates with a high level of sophistication as far as how to run a dental practice and how to be profitable within their dental practice, because they can't afford what my generation was afforded, where we could produce our way out of a difficult thing and we can have a loosely kind of run organization, because the value of our skill set is so high that we could just produce our way out and it'll hide all the flaws in the dental practice. We can't do that anymore, especially if you're graduating with $600,000 in debt.
What happened there? Like you as a successful businessman, I mean, That's the worst thing as a businessman that you step into is I'm starting this business and I already have $600,000 in debt just because I actually went and studied to become a practitioner. What spiraled out of control there? Is
Well,
that just the system that failed, or like what happened?
I'm not exactly sure all of the forces that led to this ridiculous increase in tuition rates. What I will tell you is that dentistry consistently ranks very, very high in professions that young, smart kids want to go into. There's a brain drain in medicine actually because of the consolidation wave, and I did a brief little segment in my last keynote at the summit about the difference between the earnings of a physician versus the earnings of a dentist, and the average physician works between 50 and 55 hours per week, and the average dentist works between 30 and 35 hours per week. So if you break down the hourly wages, even though they seem to be on average higher for physicians, the hourly rate is higher for dentistry because it's more of a lifestyle where you don't have to be on call over the weekends. You're not working 10 or 12-hour days necessarily unless you choose to do that. So I do believe that there's a brain drain in medicine, and then there's a lot more people interested in dentistry. So it's the basic law of supply and demand. Like if more people want to get into dental schools and qualified people can't get in, they're going to create more dental schools. And if you create a dental school, that's a very expensive endeavor, right? So you have to buy all of the equipment. You have to supply a huge infrastructure at a dental school. So in order to overcome all of those expenses, it gets passed on to the consumer, which is the dental student. So, we have 65 currently. They're expecting to have another 8 or 9 in the next 2 years. So we're going to be well into the mid 70s as far as dental schools go. And the average dental school debt right now is $292,000 when kids graduate. So, whatever the forces are that led to that, this is the reality that we're dealing with now. So you have to decide if you're going to get into dentistry, if you're going to be trying to battle that huge debt load, being a W-2 employee and getting taxed at 32 to 37%, or if you're going to take advantage of all the tax benefits of owning your own dental practice, not being taxed 37% plus state tax, and being able to take advantage of some of those business write-offs to decrease, your tax liability. And additionally, it's shown that people that own dental practices have a 15 to 20% increase in their take-home income in addition to W-2 employees. Additional benefit is that you have an asset to sell at the end of your career versus having nothing more than what you put into your retirement accounts. So those are some of the things that you should consider when you're weighing the options between, W-2 employee and owning your own dental practice. But making that decision to go into ownership comes with a lot of caveats. You have to understand how to be an effective operator, or you're going to be worse off than the W-2 employee that's making 30% and not having to deal with all the other headaches of owning a dental practice.
Is your advice at least try and run your own operation? Because I like what you're saying here about at least you have something by the end of it if it's yours. Would you say at least try it, or is there some people that's just not cut out for it and they should just go become a W-2?
I would say less than 50% of graduating young dentists are equipped or qualified or would be good at owning a dental practice. So although I make it sound sexy and beneficial to own your own dental practice, if you're going to get out and buy one and not understand what goes into having a successful dental practice, like I said, you're going to be worse off than the W-2. There's nothing wrong with being a high income individual, traditional high W-2 individual employee. You just have to understand that you're going to have to figure out a way to offset those high taxes somehow. Maybe it's real estate, maybe it's oil and gas, maybe it's other investments. You have to be aware of ways to offset that, and you have to have another mechanism that will allow you to accumulate those dollars so that you'll be ready for retirement to offset that windfall that other dentists get from owning a dental practice. But I'll tell you right now that most people that graduate are not going to be good owners.
The ones that believe they can be and that need the help right now, tell us a bit about how they can reach you, how they can join your course and the system that you've built to improve on these things that they're lacking.
Yeah, Ian, thank you. I appreciate that. So first and foremost, if you're not listening to the podcast, I started my podcast in June of 2015. We do 5 episodes a week. We have nearly 3,000 episodes in the can. Every single day, I'm talking about how to run a more profitable and efficient dental practice. Additionally, we're really big on personal development. So how to maintain strong relationships, how to control your mindset, how to be a healthier individual from a physical standpoint as well. We talk about all that stuff. So first and foremost, if you're not listening to the podcast or my podcast and consuming free content, I wish there was the amount of free content out there when I started my career in 2002. There's limitless amounts of information out there on how to do this right. But the podcast is just, I have 2,750 podcasts out there. You don't have to go back and listen to 2,750 podcasts, but you could pick up at any point and just listen to some of the philosophies on how to have a more effective dental practice, efficient and profitable. So podcast number 1, Dentalpreneur Podcast, anywhere that you consume podcasts, we're everywhere. And then there's any number of free, videos out there. I have a ton of videos on YouTube. Consume that stuff. That's the first level. Get a base level of understanding of what business is all about. And then I would seek a coach. It doesn't have to be us. It could be anybody that is qualified to build a successful dental practice. But if you want to work with us, you can just find us on truedentalsuccess.com. And then I'm really active on socials, Dr. Mark Costas on Instagram and Dr. Mark Costas on TikTok. And you can find me anywhere on socials with Dr. Mark Costas.
One thing I've taken from today and that I will carry forward with me is you are responsible for your own success, and the things that I bring around you is your responsibility. So if our listeners just take that away, I think that's already such a valuable lesson. Thank you so much for being here and talking to us.
Thank you, Ian. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate your time.